Okay, we're live, and Adam, thank you so much for doing this. Everyone, we're not Wednesday at 5. We're Tuesday at 4:30 because Adam is going to be at the hearing of Kilmargo Garcia tomorrow, right?
That is correct. As soon as we finish this Substack Live, as a matter of fact, I'm on my way to the airport so that I can get the plane to be in Nashville for tomorrow's hearing. So happy
Well,
to chat
I have
now.
so many questions for you. I'm clutching in my paw the 51-page ruling that is absolutely extraordinary. So I want you to Adam has just told me about this whistleblower report. I have been in a cave all day, and I'm just going to do shameless self-promotion here because I have finally got my first copy of the Idaho 4. And I have been spending my time, not very usefully, making TikTok videos. As we
That's useful.
build
You
up
don't need to denigrate it.
to publication day. And I got to tell you, Adam, it's a lot harder than what we normally spend our time doing. I have found it a nightmare. However, tell me about what is going on with this whistleblower report, because I've seen nothing.
Well, in advance of this judiciary confirmation hearing for Emil Bove, remember, Trump nominated his former criminal defense attorney turned senior Justice Department official, Emil Bove, for federal judgeship. And in anticipation of that hearing, one of the people who was a former subordinate of his, Erez Ruveni, filed this whistleblower disclosure, testing to this meeting that preceded. Folks who remember the name Erez Ruveni, this was the attorney when Judge Boasberg ordered the flights to return the ones that were bound to El Salvador, to return them back to the United States. It was Mr. Ruveni who had made the disclosure in the Kilmargo Garcia case that the expulsion was unlawful.
Right.
Now, he discloses in this whistleblower report, rather than describe it to you, I have it open in front of me because it's extraordinary. It is absolutely extraordinary. He talks about this meeting, everything that folks had known about what was happening, what appeared to be apparent behind the scenes is stated in this report. He talks of a meeting that takes place on March 14th, before the Judge Boasberg hearing. Bove then made a remark concerning the possibility that a court order would enjoin those removals before they could be effectuated. Bove said that DOJ would need to consider telling the courts, and since we're Substack, I'll just say the words, would need to consider telling the courts, fuck you, and ignore any court order. Mr. Ruveni perceived that others in the room looked stunned, and he observed awkward, nervous glances among the people in the room. Silence overtook the room. Mr. Ruveni and others were quickly ushered out of the room, notwithstanding Bove's directive. Mr. Ruveni left the meeting, understanding that DOJ would tell DHS to follow all court orders. Mr. Ruveni was stunned by Bove's statement because, to Mr. Ruveni's knowledge, no one in DOJ leadership in any administration had ever suggested the Department of Justice could blatantly ignore court orders, especially with a fuck you. So this is what he is saying in this whistleblower report, first reported by the New York Times, now released by the Senate Judiciary Committee in advance of Emil Bove's hearing, his confirmation proceeding for a federal judgeship. Remember, this is the same Emil Bove who was Trump's criminal defense attorney in the Manhattan trial, where Trump got 34 criminal convictions. It's the same Emil Bove who was his criminal defense attorney in both of the federal cases, and the same one who argued in front of the court because no one in Southern District of New York apparently wanted to take the case to dismiss all charges against Mayor Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City. Now, Trump nominated him for a federal judgeship, and in advance of this hearing, we have this explosive report filed by the Government Accountability Project. He claims to have receipts of everything he's saying here. The DOJ is characterizing him as this disgruntled former employee. I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about that at the hearing, but he claims to have documents backing up his account and saying that essentially that what we had been seeing about this defiance of court orders in service of the immigration objectives, that wasn't just apparent to folks who were seeing the Trump administration's response to certain court orders in real time. That was actually happening and stated openly, according to Mr. Ruveni in this meeting. And he is someone who worked for the Department of Justice during the first Trump administration. During the first administration, defended the Trump administration's immigration agenda. They're trying to depict this as political. This is someone who has a history in the Department of Justice and was fired, just to repeat it again, was fired for telling the truth, essentially, that the Justice Department had ignored this court order saying that Mr. Abrego could not be sent to El Salvador, that he was wrongly expelled from the country in defiance of that court order. So he is now a whistleblower, and that will be something that I expect to be discussed quite frequently during the upcoming confirmation proceedings.
When is the confirmation proceeding?
I believe that it is happening very soon this week. It's actually excuse me. I believe it overlaps
with the other,
with the thing that I am covering. So,
right.
Yes. So that's why. Excuse me.
But you know what, Adam? I'm listening right to this extraordinary story. And what are the odds that Mr. Bove sails past the Senate Judiciary hearing?
Right. So the confirmation hearing is set for tomorrow. I will not be covering that in real time, though I will be going back to the tapes of it. The reason I will not be covering that in real time is because I will be inside a federal court in Nashville to cover the next hearing in the Kilmargo Garcia case. The reason decided to go there again is that this particular hearing is set to be quite extraordinary. What is happening, as you mentioned, Vicky, there was this absolutely stunning 51-page and scathing order that the Trump administration didn't prove they had no legal authority to keep him detained. The reason I say that, put that in that kind of complicated manner, rather than saying they ordered him freed, well, she will order Mr. Abrego released either tomorrow in court or sometime after those proceedings. But, and here's the wrinkle, the Trump administration has said that even if he's released, they are going to try to, that ICE will put him into custody and that they will try to deport him. So that could all happen tomorrow in court. We will see Mr. Abrego's new legal team, including the former deputy to the criminal division chief in the Middle District of Tennessee, where his legal team is an all-star legal team. It includes Sean Hecker, who, if the name is familiar to any of you who are closely watching all of the Trump trials, he represented, along with his co-counsel, E. Jean Carroll, in the defamation and sex abuse cases. He's one of the people behind that huge verdict. One would imagine, hoping to humiliate Trump in a different sense this time. And his co-counsel at this firm, all very accomplished attorneys. One of them, David Patton. David Patton used to lead the Federal Defenders of New York, which are the public defenders for the Southern District of New York, Eastern District of New York. Highly accomplished lawyer. It's not an exaggeration to say that Kilmar Abrego now has an all-star legal team in what appears to be a very new and important battle for him coming ahead.
So Adam, explain to me why the DOJ would be able to, why ICE could take him, given the judge's 51-page ruling saying that the government has not remotely proved that this man was a member of MS-13. And it's fascinating because everything you told us last week here about how conflicted the witnesses, the co-conspirator witnesses who are now testifying for the government, right? That all sorts of problems with their backgrounds. I mean, this judge has laid it all out. And so, I mean, on what grounds could ICE detain him if she frees him?
Well, so the interesting thing is that ICE would be a different track. One of the things that the Trump administration is saying is that he was deportable to any country but El Salvador. But think of the cynicism here. Take aside the legality here. What the government has been saying is that this is a dangerous individual. He's a man behind an elaborate smuggling operation. And I encourage people, we've published the document on All Rise News. We've linked to it in our story and went into it in quite significant detail. But think of the cynicism involved here. I call it a heads I win, tails you lose situation. And part of the reason I found this ruling stunning but not surprising is that all of this was revealed in court last time. That we learned that the government had employed two cooperators who were convicted of the crimes that they're accusing Abrego Garcia of, and that these cooperating witnesses were people who had one of them was a 5-time deportee. The other one was deported before. The Trump administration is supposed to be tough on deportation. Well, they're giving immigration breaks to these two ex-convicts to seemingly cover up the embarrassment that Mr. Abrego's case has caused them. But you have these two cooperating witnesses. And what does the first cooperating witness tell the Trump administration when asked about any alleged affiliation with MS-13? First interview, no, I never saw anything, never saw any tattoos or anything that would suggest that Abrego was MS-13. That's the star cooperating witness. The man they're offering immigration assistance and putting in a halfway house instead of prison in order to recruit his cooperation. And what are the accounts of the two cooperators? Now, remember, the first cooperator is a man by the name of Jose Ramon Hernandez Reyes. And what he and his close relative tell the government is that Mr. Abrego would take his wife and special needs children on these smuggling trips about 4 times a week. And what the judge says is that this account defies common sense and approaches physical impossibility. And let me tell you what she meant by that. This is a 24-hour trip, 3 to 4 times a week. And we saw that testimony crumble in real time last, a week and a half ago in the courts, when the FBI agent was talking about what the cooperators told him. And then the public defender had asked the agent, said, "Do you have children?" And he said, "Yes." What happens when you take them on long car rides? They get antsy. And then you have this 24-hour trip to Texas, on Monday, 24-hour trip to Maryland on Tuesday. Thursday, you replicate the trip, and only 3 or 4 times he's not with his special needs kids and his wife. And the only thing that the government is hanging its hat on is a word of these 2 cooperators whose credibility is shot to begin with, telling them an account that is patently implausible. And that's where you get a 51-page excoriating ruling. But the government saying, wait, you know what? We have an ace up our sleeves. He can be deported, and forget what we said about him being a dangerous criminal who will be brought to justice in this court. We're going to end run the court once again by trying to send him to a different country other than El Salvador. But
so Adam, you mentioned the all-star legal team coming in. Where are the Democrats on this?
Right. Well, I think you take folks like Senator Chris Van Hollen. One of the things he went and visited Kilmargo in CCOT in El Salvador when that happened. But his discussion about that since the indictment was, this is what due process is about. Let's see how it all plays out. And I think that we're kind of unlikely to hear politicians comment on the legal proceedings once it's in court. What made it a political discussion is that the Trump administration was end running the courts. They're trying to, and right now, they say we're going to put him in custody again. He will never return back to Maryland or U.S. soil, I think was one of the things that they said. Well, we'll see. His defense attorneys and the proceedings have a say in that. And one of the defenses that came out last time was essentially that he cannot be sent to El Salvador. So the Trump administration says, well, maybe we send him to Mexico then. Okay. Yeah. But if Mexico sends him to El Salvador because he is from El Salvador, that is known as chain deportation. So he has very real defenses against deportation if the Trump administration goes that route. And one of the things I'll be looking for, and it's the reason why I'm flying over there tonight, is that we could find out that he could be released tomorrow. I mean, he could be released after the hearing. The hearing is to set the conditions of the release. And will we see the sort of thing that we've been seeing across the country, where you have immigration officials in the hallways of a courthouse? What will happen so far as that goes? And that's why I thought it was important with All Rise News to be able to witness that and to report it to folks, even if it's a little bit, even if it's dipping into the travel budgets. It's It's an important story. It's one that we covered last time, and it's one that I think that people and subscribers really want to see what's happening on the ground. So you mentioned self-promotion a little earlier. If I can self-promote a little here, if you want to support that work, All Rise News, and also look into Vicky's book on the Idaho floor.
Well, but I think the reason you and Adam, you should self-promote away, because I think the reason you and I do this, and thank you to everyone watching, is because, we do cover trials. A lot of them, I'll be in Idaho after our book comes out. There are more chapters to be written, actually, for the paperback edition as that trial unfolds. But I think that you and I both sort of see that there's an awful lot that goes on in the courtroom that doesn't make its way into the news. And to your point, if anyone listening to you last week explaining what you had seen in that courtroom in Nashville would have kind of almost been ahead of the ruling that came out. But I'm not sure if you hadn't listened to Adam of All Rise News, that you would be aware how thin the government's case against this guy in terms of his sort of, alleged gang membership and criminality really was. So I think it's very, very important. And I think, this is why we have these conversations, and this is why you go to the court and I'll be heading off to Idaho. It's exactly why. But
thank you so much, Vicky. I just wanted to underline that point. And for folks who haven't been following us, our conversations over the past few weeks, we actually both covered the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell years ago. And so we both know and believe in the importance of live court reporting. And live court reporting, when you have newsrooms across the country that are getting decimated, there's mass layoffs. You need people there to witness, and that kind of live, firsthand shoe leather news gathering needs to be supported. So we're informed about what's happening in our institutions. One of the tragedies of people talk, I think, a much bigger problem facing the news media than censorship, self-censorship. That is a problem. I don't want to underplay that. And more than people inserting their political opinions, much more than bias or censorship, the worst problem is a lack of support and funding for journalists who are in the institutions providing us the information. The information needs to be provided by people who know how the institutions operate, how to get there, how to put it into context and make sense of it to the general public. There needs to be the expertise to be able to do that and the way to communicate that so people are informed. There's a lot of opinion out there. There's a lot of analysis, but the discussions don't happen if we don't get the information out there to begin with. So just underlining your point, Vicky, that's why, your background as an investigative journalist who digs deep in the institutions, that's where it begins.
Yes. And I will add, every time I sit through a trial, and you must have found this, Adam, it's such a learning curve. There are so many things about the law that sort of I find I still don't know, and you always come away kind of aware of just how much, and if we don't understand the finer points of everything that's going on, then how do people who don't do this for a living? So I think, again, underscoring definitely what you do and hopefully what I do. But just in relation to the Mr. Garcia, the SCOTUS ruling, the Supreme Court's ruling. I was talking to Jessica Yellen last night about it, that came out about, it's okay to send, deport immigrants to places like South Sudan, right? I mean, walk me through where that is, because I mean, again, I've been busy all day, but I thought I caught a headline saying that yes, the Supreme Court made that ruling, but yet the guys, there are 8 or 9 guys currently in Djibouti who were supposed to be going to South Sudan, and they're not moving. Is that right?
That's correct. So there's the ruling and what happened after the ruling. So let me tell you what happened with the ruling. In what appears to be a 6-3 decision, there might be some, I say appears to be because it's on, for highly technical reasons, we don't know the breakdown of the majority, but it appears to be a 6-3 ruling. The Supreme Court paused an order by a judge in the District of Massachusetts who had done the most modest ruling you can imagine. He said that if you are going to send immigrants to a country they're not from, particularly a human rights abusing or war-torn country like South Sudan, you need to provide notice and a hearing. That was the substance of the ruling, and he issued that injunction in broad strokes in April. In May, he put some more specificity into it when the Trump administration went forward, despite that earlier injunction, and started pushing this flight to South Sudan, despite the earlier order. Now, for reasons unknown, and this isn't a rhetorical flourish, we don't know because the Supreme Court didn't disclose it. They paused the judge's order guaranteeing due process for immigrants who are going to be sent to a war zone, to a notorious human rights abuser. That he said, give them notice and process. Supreme Court says, okay, you can keep doing that until we get the case. They didn't overturn his ruling, but they paused it. Now, what and Sotomayor, Justice Sotomayor, and the three liberal justices, uniformly horrified about all this, saying that it was rewarding lawlessness. Immediately after the ruling, there was something interesting that happened. The judge said, okay, the Supreme Court, for reasons unknown, paused my April order. My May order is still in full force and effect. So the May order, remember, that was the one regarding the plane in Djibouti, where the judge said, you need to, for these 6 men, you need to provide some access to counsel. You need to give them reasonable fear hearings, basically establish a fear that if you ship them to South Sudan, they could be tortured or killed. And Justice Sotomayor was very clear. Those are the stakes. Might these men be tortured and killed? So they are entitled, as a result of this May ruling, to these reasonable fear hearings. And if they establish a reasonable fear, they go back to the United States. And the Trump administration says they're dangerous criminals. Some of them, maybe, yes, some of them are convicted of very serious crimes, but that doesn't necessarily mean, and not all of them, by the way, but that doesn't mean that rule of law no longer applies. It means, the United States has prisons. They know how to take care of murderers and people who are convicted of serious crimes. And they also know how to, and immigration detention knows how to take care of people who have not been accused of that, who are also among these 6. Now, what we're waiting to see now, the Trump administration said, "Oh, Supreme Court, can you clarify that earlier order?"
Yes, of course. I mean, yes, begs the question, right? So, we're waiting for another ruling, or we're waiting for a clarification?
We're waiting for a ruling clarifying the earlier ruling, and we'll see through that ruling the basis, because the conservative majority of the Supreme Court refused to tell us why they wouldn't guarantee what the judge's ruling, which was uphold these people's constitutional rights and statutory obligations of the government. So if the Supreme Court says, if they clarify it, it would be great to get some clarification, because what is the basis? Some have speculated that the basis was that for a very technical reason, the judge was not allowed potentially to give that relief on a class-wide basis. Well, this isn't a class. These are 6 men on a tarmac or near a tarmac in Djibouti. Otherwise, all we know is that these conservative justices backed the Trump administration for reasons unknown. But for whatever reason, they wanted to back the Trump administration. Was it this jurisdictional hook? Because that jurisdictional hook does not apply to these 6 men in Djibouti. So it's going to be a very interesting discussion, and we will find out what the reach of this Supreme Court ruling, because this can apply to thousands of immigrants being sent to countries they are not from. This isn't about deportation to the countries that they're from. This is deportation to human rights abusers, war-torn areas that they have no connection to.
Well, we'll be watching very closely for that. Diddy. So I see that the prosecution has rested and that he has stood up, was very polite to the judge, and said he will not be taking the stand in his own defense. And I guess, we are going to find out. I don't think that he's likely to have, I mean, from what I read, you can tell me if this is right. It's not likely to be a long, the defense is not likely to take long now. I mean, they've made most of their arguments on cross, right? On cross-examination. Correct. And so I guess the question that you and I have been discussing these last weeks as to whether or not the government has persuaded this jury that this was a racketeering enterprise, that this was a business enterprise, that Sean Coombs used his business to sex traffic and to commit arson and to exploit these women. I mean, that is going to be the question here, not right. Whether he was sexually abusive, which he definitely was. Right. So I guess we're getting to the end of that.
That's correct. And that's the reporting that I'm reading as well, that he is not going to testify in his own defense. And that makes perfect sense. He has much more to lose than to gain. It's the government's burden of proof on very serious crimes that are racketeering and sex trafficking. And he doesn't need to. He doesn't have that burden, and so I would have been surprised had he actually testified. We could see, according to reporting that I've read, closing arguments on Thursday. I wouldn't be surprised if it lasted multiple days, and it looks like that case is wrapping up very soon.
All right. Well, on that note, I'll let you get your flight.
I'm heading to the airport literally within a half hour of the end of this Zoom. And for folks who want to follow, and I'm going to shamelessly self-promote again, for folks who want to follow what happens tomorrow in the court when the judge comes up with the terms of release for Kilmar Abrego and the government reveals its stated plans to put him in immigration custody and try to deport him. What happens? Those are the stakes. That's all happening tomorrow. I'm going to be reporting it from All Rise News. If you subscribe, you'll get an email about it. And if you become a paid subscriber, I'll have a Q&A about that, and it'll help offset the travel expenses of this important story.
Which is important.
It is. And for Vicky, and if you could, since I have spent so much time self-promoting that, please hold your book up once again so people see that title.
Hey, everyone's going to be sick of it, but trust me. But also a very, very important story. But Adam, it's going to be riveting, and I will be keeping an eye, as will you, on what goes on in the Senate for the hearing of Mr. Emil Bove. It's going to be fascinating.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure the video clips will be clipped aplenty. So when I come up for air out of the Middle District of Tennessee, we'll definitely have analysis about it. I'm sure we'll be talking about it next week, perhaps with a verdict in the Sean Coombs case.
Awesome. Adam, thank you and good luck.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Safe travels.
Looking forward to talking more. Bye-bye.
Bye.